Back here on Sportsline, busy times. Crazy times in 2020, but certainly busy times as well. Obviously getting set for the presidential election. I think everybody by now knows that the third and final presidential debate, or I guess second and final, given what happened last week with the town halls, will be on the campus of Belmont University here in Nashville. Both President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden will be there. And obviously we'll have coverage throughout the NewsChannel 5 network and platforms all day tomorrow amongst their visits and getting set for the debate as well. That's just part of the busy calendar at Belmont right now. Huge times getting set and getting ready for the debate. But also, if you're athletic director Scott Corley, you've got a lot of things on your plate to get the athletic programs back up and running after what has been a crazy year with COVID-19. Basketball season set to start basically a month from now at the end of November. Practice is ongoing. What's the schedule look like? What's the process look like with all of that? We are happy to be joined now tonight by the athletic director of Belmont, Scott Corley. Scott, I'm assuming nothing's really, in your way to get to your office. It's not hard to park right now. Things are just easy for you as the athletic director over there, aren't they?
Oh yeah, no, it's exciting. It's for us, we have been out of our office for the last couple of days just because where the debate's happening, the security and whatnot. But no, it's so exciting. It's neat to have all the eyeballs across this country and internationally watching what's going to happen tomorrow night. Back in 2008 when we did it, it really put us on the stage internationally and helped our university kind of figure out that we can do big events like this. And I know Dr. Fisher and the team have put so much time and effort into making this one a success and really showing a lot of determination to make it still happen. I mean, of the three universities that originally signed up to host, it was us, Michigan, and Notre Dame, and Michigan and Notre Dame decided they didn't want to have it. So I think it speaks a lot to what Dr. Fisher's feelings on the importance of what's going to happen tomorrow night. And so it's been really neat to see the campus transform, to see all the banners go up, the lights, just a lot of excitement. Obviously, COVID-19 threw a curveball at everybody's plans. But for us in athletics, we're just thrilled to be associated with a university that's going to put on such a big time event.
Scott, can you describe the buzz? Because obviously this has been a very different fall semester because of COVID and everything that's going on. But what is it like this week when really the eyes of the nation come upon Belmont?
That's a great point. I mean, the buzz on campus up until now has just been different. I mean, because, the students are taking all the masking protocols seriously, all the things of trying to avoid being together and socializing, in order to stay safe during the semester. And so, when you started seeing the tents and you started seeing all these people come on campus and get ready for it, you could feel an energy on campus that we really haven't had all semester. And I know, the universities worked really hard to make sure the students feel engaged, and that's all students, that they can be part of, all the different, Zoom calls that we've done around it and things like that. I know a couple of our student athletes have certainly been engaged and really are enjoying, watching the political process unfold on our campus. And so it's been really neat to see, and it does. It's created a nice little buzz that really in some parts has been missing on campus this semester.
You mentioned the debate back in 2008. That was during a stretch in which Belmont won 3 straight Atlantic Sun championships to go to the NCAA Tournament for the first, second, and third time ever. Of course, those numbers have only grown under Rick Byrd, and then last year another championship under your new coach, Casey Alexander. Is it fair to say that in the last 15 years or so, as Belmont has sort of exploded on the national stage and enrollment has grown and certainly the perspective of where Belmont fits in the national order of things has grown, is it fair to say that the success of the basketball program and maybe the lure of certainly that debate in 2008 are maybe the two things that put the school on the map as much as anything?
I don't know if you can say it was just those two things, but certainly the debate put us on a whole new level, Steve. I mean, it really, I don't remember the exact numbers, but 80 million people were watching across the country. And those things can never hurt when you're trying to build your university and grow your university. So it's amazing vision by Dr. Fisher. What we try to do in athletics always is just really continue to help any way we can get Belmont University out there on a national level, through our hopefully our quality of play, obviously the quality of our student athletes by winning, all academic honors, et cetera. And so I do think the timing was fortuitous that you have the debate and then our name is out there as well on a national level by playing in the NCAA tournament. I don't think it could hurt. I'm not going to sit here and say, those were the only two factors. You obviously have the city of Nashville in and of itself. And let's be honest, the quality of the programs, academic programs that Belmont continues to roll out have certainly played a role, whether it's the law school, the pharmacy school, our sports administration graduate program and undergrad program. I mean, there's just so much into that, but hopefully we played a little bit of part of that. And, we obviously feel, when we can get that exposure on the NCAA basketball stage, it can't hurt enrollment for Belmont.
Hey, there's a lot to brag about, but you have to get people to take notice before they can look into all those other things that you talk about that are so good. We're talking with Scott Corley, the athletic director at Belmont here on Sportsline tonight. Scott, tell me, what's the job of an athletic director in the middle of a pandemic when there aren't a whole lot of athletics, at least on the competition side of things?
Yeah, it's been different, but it's been busy. I mean, obviously, you gotta deal with a lot of different factors. You're spending time, at least when it first hit, trying to determine what the spring sports are going to look like, and then when the decision was made to pull the plug on those, then you're looking like, okay, what's the summer? How are we going to look, budgeting wise, things like that. Then it was like almost deja vu again when fall started. You were very hopeful. Things felt really good in early June, and then the wave kind of came where students were getting back on campus, student athletes were, and starting to see the test increase. And so that kind of gave you a little bit of pause. And then you get into the fall. Unfortunately, we had to make the decision to push the fall. So I think we're all in it's all new. There's no handbook for any of this. I do think you're trying to figure out, I think some of the challenges, you're trying to plan around things you have no control of. And that can be challenging as a leader, and particularly a leader of athletics, because coaches, they're creatures of habit. They like to start preseason at a certain time. They like their practice schedules to be a certain way. They like to know what their schedule is. And so I think it's been an adjustment for all of us. As the athletic director, you try to stay focused and you try to inform. I don't think you can over communicate with your staff and coaches on some of the things that are going on, some of the challenges that they as coaches may not see from an administrative standpoint. So not going to lie, it hasn't been easy, but I think we've all been able to really understand the dynamics at play and do the best we can and understand it's going to be different. And we just need to stick to our core values. And what I tell our coaches all the time is, you guys are educators, and this is part of education is, how do you manage through challenging times that you really don't have a lot of control over and those type of things. And so hasn't been easy, but I'm blessed to be surrounded by great staff and coaches who have been willing to accept it, embrace it as best they can, and really continue to focus on doing what's right for the student athletes.
Belmont doesn't have football, but the OVC announced that fall sports were shifting to the spring this year. So at the moment, are you playing all your spring sports and all your fall sports under a spring calendar in 2021?
Yes, that's the plan. And it's going to be a busy spring.
Yeah.
We're close to finalizing a lot of those schedules with women's soccer and in volleyball. Obviously, we want to be sensitive to the spring sports that had their seasons cut short last year. So I think, right now the intention is to play a full spring baseball, spring softball, the outdoor tracks, just all the sports that go into that. So there's going to be a lot of juggling. I mean, on a lot of different campuses, we're not alone. Everybody's in the same boat, whether you're in the OVC or not, for the most part. And I keep warning my staff. It's like, pace yourself now, catch your breath, because we're going to be awfully busy come spring.
All right, let's dive into basketball. Normally by now we'd be talking about secret scrimmages. I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but we'd be doing it, and then we'd be getting set for exhibition games or season openers and those sort of things. That's going to wait a little bit. The start date is now towards the end of November. But what can you tell us of where basketball stands right now, particularly with your program at Belmont, what scheduling looks like, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I tell you, in a lot of ways, I was glad the NCAA made the decision when they made the decision to push the season back, because that did give us a lot of time to really look at the schedules and realize, okay, how many games are we losing? Which ones can we keep? Which ones can we not? Obviously, you hear a lot of rumors, and certain folks in the media do have a pretty good pulse on these multi-tournament events, the MTEs. We're playing in one in Orlando. That's obviously going to look differently than what we thought when we signed up for that tournament. But I still think it's going to happen. I still think there's a lot of good competition that's going to be down there. Just don't know exactly who and when. But it looks like it'll be that for us. It looks like it'll be that first week of November on the men's side. Obviously for my viewpoint on it was we need to figure out what the conference is going to do. And we're still working through that. What is the conference season going to look like? When do you play the games? Do you maybe move some up in December to try to get them when students are off campus? Those type of discussions we've been having at the OVC level. But it's like anything. I mean, until it's all settled and contracts are signed and all those things are worked out, you just don't know. So, on the women's side, I think Coach Brooks has done a good job with a lot of the teams that we originally had on the schedule. I think we'll keep them, and same with Casey. For the most part, Casey's been able to keep a lot of the games. But when you take 15 days out of that schedule and you only eliminate 4 games, you're eliminating 4 games up to 6. That really changes things, because you still got the Christmas week where you really don't want to play. And the NCAA has said those kids need to have 3 days off. And then you have, for some schools, you've got exams. At least for us, that's not an issue, because our exams in the semester will be done on November 20th. But there's just a lot that goes into that, and everybody's dates that they needed to fill and opponents that they may needed to switch. It doesn't all just add up nicely. It's like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, I had one high major coach tell me that whoever his schedule maker is deserves a raise after going through this fall and everything that's happened. Do you have a date? Are we going to see a schedule in the next week, 2 weeks? It's got to come out at some point, doesn't it?
It does need to come out, obviously. Yeah, I think you'll see something. I don't know if next week is fair to put that on anybody, but I'd say hopefully in the next week to 10 days. But again, some things got to get finalized before, we're willing to put that out there. But we all understand the need to get it out there. Our fan bases are still, they don't have any idea who we were supposed to play. They don't have any idea who we are playing in the non-conference part. But we need to get that out there so then people can make some decisions. And then obviously what goes along with that is we've got to decide what we're going to be allowed to do inside our venue from an attendance perspective. So there's a lot of things to manage. And when you look at this, we're 4 weeks away or whatever the math is. So, yeah, I think that's going to force a lot of this stuff to start coming out in the next week or two, Steve.
You segued perfectly to my next question. What can you tell us about what the Curb Center is going to look like in terms of fan involvement? Obviously, we've seen the Titans put several thousand people. Nashville SC put several thousand people back in Nissan Stadium, but that's a massive stadium and it's outdoors. You're dealing with a much smaller max capacity under the best of circumstances and inside. What kind of conversations have you, the school, and probably city leaders, I would assume, involved there? What kind of conversations have you had?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at where Nashville is in the phases, obviously, if it goes back to phase 2, I think we'll have a real hard time getting any fans in the stands. When you're in phase 2, phase 3, it looks like we can have maybe up to 500. Phase 4 is what we're hopeful for, and in that case, when you socially distance and you look at our setup inside our arena, we feel like we can get possibly up to 1,200 people in there. But we're still working through all the plans. We've been somewhat waiting. The NCAA is trying to come out with some guidelines and protocols on what, and then the OVC as well. I'm on a subcommittee within the OVC on what the venue protocols need to be. So we're working through all that, but hopefully, the trends will go in the positive direction with lower cases and those types of things where Nashville can move to phase 4, and then I think we can have a much better feel for what our max capacity is.
Well, we are all hoping for that, for sure. Scott, how important is that attendance piece to things? Obviously, we've seen some major professional leagues go the bubble route where they have no attendance, but they get away with that because they have million and in some case billion-dollar television contracts that pay for everything. At the college athletics level, especially at a school like Belmont, where basketball really is your moneymaker, how important is that attendance piece? And if you only have partial attendance or no attendance at all, how much would that hurt what you can do in the athletic department?
Well, it would certainly hurt. I mean, we do get a decent amount of individual and group tickets to come to every game that really probably wouldn't be allowed to happen under any scenario this year. Our season ticket holders, we've got a core group of season ticket holders that have already renewed despite not knowing anything. But if we can't have them, hopefully they would just roll over their, deposits and whatnot to the next year. But when I look at our revenue sources, our biggest source is sponsorships, quite honestly, Steve, and that's another challenge in and of itself. I mean, if we are having basketball games that get canceled, we're going to have to work with our sponsors to find other ways to fulfill the sponsorship agreements. A lot of them, they want to partner with us during basketball season, and so we've had some really good dialogue with our sponsors. They're an amazingly supportive group of ours, but they are asking some of those questions, like what does that look like, and things like that. So the revenue side is, I mean, we're all facing the challenges. I mean, we're all facing those headwinds. Where we're blessed at Belmont is, we're part of a university that has really taken care of its financial resources over the years, and it's, for us, it's not going to make or break if we have 1 year where we're not getting the normal ticket revenue that we have. So what concerns me is, I felt like we were, and I feel strongly we were building momentum with our season tickets and our season ticket base, and we had such a successful end of the season that I was really pumped about the carryover that would bring going into this season, particularly when you've got such a good team coming back, and all the excitement that was being generated from the end of the season. I really thought we could set records with season ticket sales and the things like that, because we're going to have a fun team. It's going to be a very competitive team, and we've got a competitive schedule, or did, and we still do, but it's going to be a little different. But that's where I'm more concerned, is just losing that momentum of where the growth was.
Yeah, certainly understand that. It had to have been a very difficult conversation last year that you and Casey Alexander had to have when the NCAA tournament was canceled. Your team was one of the few that was already in. You'd won the OVC tournament, you were headed dancing, and then it gets canceled. That's a huge revenue stream that gets lost for the entire OVC and every school around the country. What is the NCAA saying now about their plans for this year? It's hard to imagine for me, an NCAA tournament not happening again, barring absolute catastrophe. But it's also hard to imagine it looking like the last several that have happened, given where we are right now. So where we are right now, what are the latest conversations of what March Madness might look like?
Well, I think it's, from what I'm hearing, the plan is to have as normal a March Madness as you can have the 68 teams. Obviously so much is still going to be dependent on what things look like with the virus, with vaccines, things like that. But I think what could be different in at a minimum is, if you recall last year when all this first started and there was talk of still having the tournament with no fans, but at the time, no one had really done that. There was still Rudy Gobert test positive. I think the reaction was, let's be safe and shut it down. We just can't do it. I think now that you've had a year, and you see all the sports, and you see that you can still play those games without fans in the stands, I think that makes an easier decision for the NCAA to say, we can have the tournament, and maybe the tournament is without fans. I can't sit here today and say, who knows, what that's going to look like. But we've got to have an NCAA tournament. We cannot go 2 years without one as an NCAA. The financial impact of that would be just devastating. And so I think one way or another, we're going to figure it out. And obviously we're going to do it in as safe a way as possible. But to me, when you're approaching November 25th, like it's the start of the season, and we're going to hopefully be able to manage through it. And a lot of people are talking about having fans in the stands. So why can't we assume that the tournament's going to play?
It needs to. Too many kids lost out on opportunities of lifetimes last year, and obviously there's a huge financial piece as well. Scott, last thing before I let you go. It sounds like Belmont's in a pretty good position on the athletic side and as a university side to weather everything we've gone through in 2020, at least up until this point. There are other schools that certainly are not so lucky. We have seen cuts across the board at many schools in terms of men's sports, women's sports, staff in the athletic department. When this all wraps up, hopefully sooner rather than later, but when it gets over and we start to move back towards normal, what's that going to look like? What's your biggest concern of what might be changing in college athletics based off of what we're going through now?
Well, I do think there continues to be a greater divide between the haves and the have-nots. It just, the Power Fives are able to do things with all the money that they're making, even this year. I understand a lot of them are losing millions of dollars, but they're still going to be able to generate significant TV revenue. So just a continued separation from the have and the have-nots. And really, so much of it's driven by just the strength of a university and how those universities, what their enrollment growth looks like. And if COVID-19 continues to have an impact on just enrollment numbers in general, I think the schools at our level will have a harder time. We just, at our level, so many schools are subsidized by the university, and there's still a lot of Power Fives that are that way, but a lot of Power Fives are self-sustaining. So, and I don't know every school's got to make their own decision on eliminating sports or not. Some of that is, if you're eliminating sports that have partial scholarships, what are you doing to the overall revenue of the university if you're taking those kids away? Because a lot of them are still paying some form of tuition to be at that school and play a sport. So I can't speak to the specifics of that, but I do think it takes the margin of error down to a much thinner level, where you've got to have all your a lot of your contingency plans sealed up, and you better be out there raising money and getting sponsors and doing the things that you need to support your programs.
Scott Corley, we appreciate the time tonight. Good information as always. Best of luck as you finish the final games on those basketball schedules and getting through this winter, hopefully healthy and hopefully with a lot of wins under your belt.
Well, thank you, Steve. Always, I enjoy spending time with you, so appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll do it next time in person. How about that? Scott Corley, thanks so much for the time tonight. Belmont Athletic Director. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little Nashville SC. That's right after this on Sportsline.